background noise. After speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you, Mr. Dave Wilford. You may begin your conference.
Thanks, Anna. Want to welcome everyone. We're going to start here. We have some individuals in the room with us. We're going to start with questions here. I'll turn it over to the phones in a couple of minutes, and you'll be able to ask questions. So please raise your hand if you're here with us. We'll bring a mic over, and let's get started. Questions? Andrew. It's on. Yeah.
This morning, D'Antonio was asked about the perceived strengths versus weaknesses in the storyline of defense versus offense. Are there things they do now that they defense and think people are overlooking that they do very well? It's something you're actually very concerned about. They do well. It's not just the defense everyone knows about.
Well, yeah, I think their defense is outstanding, and it's obviously been the strength of their team for the last several years. You go back and look, maybe over the last about 2.5 seasons that they've had, I think their greatest improvements have been offensively. They had a couple losses in there. I'm going to forget who it was against, but they had like a 12-10 loss and a bunch of losses kind of in that range. And their offense has maybe given them a little bit more confidence, a little bit more margin for error, however you want to look at it. But I mean, defensively, they're outstanding. They have a great scheme. They know exactly what they're doing. They don't do a ton, and their adjustments are great. They're never going to give you something twice. They're great adjusters at what they do, and then they have kind of a rock solid kind of one thing fits all defense, a way to blitz from the same look, and then a way to attack you on third down, which is they're very, very good.
Defense that comparisons might not be fair, but comparison that you see that people would say, compared to a Stanford or compared to...
No, not in our conference. There's nobody like them in our conference, and there hasn't been too many people like them across the country. So there's not a great comparison, no.
Raise your hand if there are any questions, please. Jill.
What have you done differently this week with your team to prepare them for the physicality they're going to see on the field?
We haven't done anything other than our normal practices. Obviously, we're trying to ramp up our scout teams on both sides of the ball. As far as we don't have too many guys, we don't have too many Shalik Calhouns, walking around campus on either side of the ball, and certainly not on our scout team. And so, trying to represent either their physicality up front on both sides of the ball is difficult. That's hard for everybody across the country to simulate the scout teams this time of year. In the off season, obviously we did a big study on these guys as well as anybody kind of new that we play, and then your game week. Other than the urgency of it being a national game and all that stuff, it can't be too much different. If it's drastically different, everybody's looking around like, wait, why do we need to do something different this week? But our guys know this is a big quote unquote big game, and we have nothing but respect for Michigan State.
Are you doing anything different with your offensive linemen and telling them how they must stop the defense from penetrating so that you can open up your running game and not get yourself in those third and longs again?
Well, hopefully we're not doing that any week, and obviously it's a different challenge. The schematics of their defense, it's way different than our defense. It's much different than anybody we play in this conference from a schematic standpoint, how they align, and then again the body type doing it is also equally difficult to replicate. But yeah, we're trying not to be in third and long against anybody, and certainly not these guys.
In the front here, I'm sorry, Austin.
Mark, what were your thoughts on Don's first game as defensive coordinator, just in terms of game day operation, communication on the headsets, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the game day operation part of it was good. We were very limited in what we did. Just tried to go out there and wanted them to communicate, play hard, get aligned, run and tackle. And for the most part, we were pretty good at that. We didn't tackle great. Part of that again was how we were aligned, which was again a very base deal against some different looks that they gave us. That'll obviously change throughout the season. But good overall. And we've had a good week of training and preparation so far this week.
How does the sort of in-game aspect of that? How does the in-game aspect of that job change when there's more of the playbook maybe at this disposal for the youth?
How does it change? Or
Yeah,
I don't understand.
is there maybe more to think about as a coordinator when you have a little more of the playbook, or is it frustrating maybe as a coordinator when you don't have some aspects of the playbook?
Yeah, that's one of those things. When you're in a first game like that, and when the game kind of gets away on both sides of the ball and in special teams, we're going to just kind of do our deal, so to speak. And when it's a guy that's never done it before and is doing it for the first time, and it's not the perfect look that you're doing it against in any phase, that's not always going to be pretty. And so from that standpoint, some of those games you get late, those are the most frustrating when you're up by a bunch and you're mad at your third team, whoever's execution, because we want those guys to be perfect as well. But there'll be some give and take and some change ups as far as playing against Michigan State, and their personnel groupings are again much different than South Dakota, and there's a couple teams, Stanford being one of them offensively, they're somewhat similar, but I think both at quarterback. The way Cook has played over the last several games, they've got a lot of skill on the perimeter and in the backfield. There's some weapons at his disposal that we'll definitely have to be aware of and defend.
Anna, I want to go to the phones. Hold on, please. Take questions for those who are on the phone line. Again, if you have a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad.
And our first question comes from the line of Graham Couch from the Lansing State Journal.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Wanted to ask you a little bit about playing a team like Michigan State in sort of the similar mold offensively is Stanford, a program that's maybe given you guys as much fits as anybody over the last couple of years. What have you learned from those games, and what's been kind of the secret? The outside perception is if you hit you guys in the mouth, that's the way to go, to run the ball and be physical.
Well, certainly, we lost to Stanford last year in a different manner in which we lost to Stanford the previous year, and before that, we kind of had the upper hand. And if you look at our Stanford game, we lost in an execution style, not literally in the John McKay execution style, but we were out executed. And they milked the clock down and out executed us in just plain and simple. Against Arizona, they were fast and furious and out executed us there. We had a couple kind of needless and silly penalties, a couple turnovers that really hurt us. And so a totally different type of game. And, I think that's the media's job, right? If one loss happens, it's, we have to totally rebuild our program. And it's just kind of that unfair situation to our guys, maybe to a certain extent that Stanford loses to Utah and it's just an aberration. If we lose to Stanford, we need to blow everything up and start over. And so we know that we're playing an outstanding team and they're much different than Stanford, equally skilled in a bunch of different ways, different in some. But we have to, it's the same fundamentals. You got to block and tackle, run, play with great leverage, adjust. There's going to be some highs and lows and keep playing.
Our next question comes from the line of Dennis Dodd from CBSSports.com.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I think you just answered this question, but how do you feel about this being portrayed as, more than just a game? It's a clash of philosophies, the Blur versus Braun thing.
It's a great storyline. Absolutely, it's a great storyline. It's great for the media and great for fans, and that's exactly what it should be. Whoever wins, whoever loses, I think they're going to have to rebound exactly the same way. It's going to be, a big distraction in some ways to some people, or it could be a distraction to win or lose this game, going forward. But that's exactly what it is. It's one game, they're, I think, in the driver's seat, certainly in their conference, and losing this game, I don't think we'll change that in any way. And if that happens to us, we don't want to think that way, but we'll rebound as well. And then nationally, absolutely, there'll be some hyperbole drawn out of it.
Our next question comes from Bob Witters from Seattle Times.
Mark,
when you say that they're schematically a lot different defensively from what you see in the Pac-12, can you just give us a general sense as to what that amounts to?
Well, yeah, I mean their base deal. They're a 4-3 defense, a 4-3 quarters defense that kind of they basically self-adjust to every formation, and then they have a pressure out of it. They really have one look. That's not fair. I mean, I think it's a huge compliment. Everybody thinks if you call somebody simple or basic, we're called simple or basic all the time, and that's kind of a compliment from our angle. They're really, really, really good at what they do, and there's nobody that lines up like that in our conference. And then they have a completely different deal when they want to either pressure you or get after you in some nickel fronts and some 3-down looks. And so from that standpoint, there's not anybody that really does that. The old Washington State Rose Bowl team was kind of probably the last team that lined up in a bunch of that, just 4-3 quarters. There was a couple, the Fiesta Bowl, Oregon State defense was a little bit like that, but these guys, they're really, really good at what they do.
Our next question comes from the line of Pat Fordy from Yahoo Sports.
Hi, Mark. I was just wondering, with 9 conference games and a conference championship game, you guys take on a big non-conference game like this. Are you good with that kind of thing, or is it more ambitious than other leagues? And if so, does that bother you?
Is our athletic director sitting next to you right now, or is that just an open question? No, I think we love this kind of game. I think it's a huge challenge. This is a great program. Again, I have a ton of respect for them and Coach D'Antonio. If everybody else is playing an 8-game conference schedule and 4 gimmies, then we'd probably rather play Eastern Michigan State Union or somebody else. But that's we have a tough conference schedule, 9-game conference schedule plus the championship. And if you look at our schedule drawn out plus one other real non-conference opponent at least going forward. And so we have, we've certainly made our own bed and we'll attack it.
Our next question comes from the line of Seth Miller from ESPN.com.
Mark, with such a headlining game and such a headlining player with Marcus Mariota, how do you make sure that he doesn't go out and try to press too much and do too much in this game?
Well, yeah, I think Marcus, is a guy that puts a lot of pressure on himself. He's a tremendous teammate, a tremendous competitor, and I think part of that is how you game plan and kind of put some stuff, quote unquote, on him that it's just rock solid execution, and he's maybe gonna get hit in a good way and get that anxiety and that juice out of his system right off the bat. And then part of it, is dictated by, again, what they do, and they don't give you an inch. And so you've got to use him to his strengths, both mentally and physically as best as you possibly can.
Our next question comes from the line of Mike Griffith from the New Year Media Group.
Yeah, that's close. Hey, Coach, this is Mike Griffiths from the MLive Media Group. I wanted to ask you if you could compare Michigan State's defensive philosophy to what you saw when you were the coordinator against LSU, and also if there's any trepidation about running Marcus against a defense that's known for some of their hitting prowess.
I think they're similar to LSU athletically. I think that again, the scheme is quite a bit different. LSU was, again, kind of mixes their fronts a lot more, and personnel a lot more. Just kind of a different style of zone blitz, and Michigan State they don't vary as much. I think they're equally, if not more effective. And then what was it about Marcus? Again, Marcus is a his style. He likes to improvise. That's part of his one of his best strengths. And so that's not something we're not going to rein him in too much in situations that he will kind of realize it. By play call, by scheme, you can limit some of that stuff, but those are also some of our biggest strengths.
We have a follow-up question from the line of Dennis Dodd from CBSSports.com.
Mark, a general question. How do you go about, recruiting guys when you know and they know that, they're going to share time? Talk about skilled players, talking about, receivers, tailbacks. How do you go about that, and when did that start?
Well, that's a great question, and it's funny because at Oregon we used to scratch and claw to get in on one guy, and now people, in our conference and across the country negatively recruit us that we have too many guys, and so that's kind of something that's difficult for us to comprehend. But the way that we deploy the field, the ball could end up in any spot at any time, and so it could be. It could be a couple games or it could be half a season before a guy kind of gets into a huge role as far as actually having the ball in his hands, how we practice, how we play. It's going to all add up at some point. And so we've got room for everybody. And, we've got, like everybody, we've got recruiting bullet points that we try to hit in terms of numbers and ideal numbers at every position. And we love to spread it out and get those guys the ball.
Our next question comes from the line of Steve Summers from EDUC.
Mark, when you look at the Michigan State roster, are there any of those guys that you recruited?
There are several guys, that we tried to recruit, and they're really good. I'm sorry?
Who was that?
I don't want to get into exact names, but there's a bunch of guys on both sides of the ball that we tried to recruit that are really playing well for him.
And once again, if you have a question or a comment, we're starting at number 1 on your telephone keypad. And our next question comes from the line of Chris Solari from the Lansing State Journal.
Mark, a lot has been made of your offense against Michigan State's defense. Talk a little bit about Michigan State's offense, which especially Connor Cook has been able to pass the ball with some pretty good regularity the past 3 games that they've played. What kind of things do you have to have your guys, especially your secondary, prepared for?
Well, everything, and that's exactly where they've created a beast in terms of they've always been a physical team in terms of being able to run the ball. Obviously, with Langford, with Hill, they've got multiple threats back there, and just pounding you in the traditional fashion. But now there's play action pass. I mean, if you looked at their stats the other day in the first half, it looked like run and shoot stats. They had, huge passing numbers. They've got big, fast, physical wideouts that when you get those guys singled up because of play action and the run looks that you have to respect, that puts you in one-on-one matchups outside. And then, they have a stockpile of really talented tight ends that you have to account for. They haven't used those guys a ton, but whenever the play action game comes up, those guys can be a huge weapon.
Anna, let's take one more question from the callers, and I'm going to bring give chance to those who are here in person to ask some questions. Is there one more question right now?
Yes, we have a follow-up question from the line of Mike Griffith from the NY Media Group.
Yeah, thank you. Coach, I was just going to ask you to break down Connor Cook a little bit more. Obviously, he was a guy that didn't start last year, but kind of came on as the season progressed. You've coached some great ones. What do you think about Connor's attributes?
Well, I don't like him very much because he's really good. That's my initial response. He's a tough guy, has a great command of their offense and what they ask him to do. Tremendous arm strength, the package of routes that they put together in the play action game, the single cut winner game. He has thrown really well, like you said, especially towards the second half of last season. And then they've got a series of play action stuff that he manages really well. And they're very stingy in terms of turning the ball over. And he's a perfect fit for what they do.
Okay, hold the questions on the phone, Anna. Are there any questions here? Jill?
Coach, the nation is looking at this game as a statement game, 2 top 10 teams at a conference. But what is the measuring stick you have for the Ducks in the game? What do you need to see as the coach?
We need to prepare great and play hard and leave it all out there. We've had a couple games that we've won, and we've had a couple games that we've lost where that wasn't necessarily the case. I think our preparation to this point has been really good. Flipping toward an opponent like this, and just going out and taking our best shot, because that's what it's going to take. And if you do that, give every single thing you have, you get, there's a call here, a bounce there, and that may end up deciding the game. You have no doubts about how you've represented yourself, your conference, or whatever other statement we're trying to make.
Questions here.
I think we should have the other moderator, Dave, step in.
So if these guys bring a lot of pressure, like Greenwood has talked about, and some of the linemen have talked about, how important is the timing going to be between Mariota and the receivers to get rid of the ball quickly and on time? And are you confident that this group is ready to step up that challenge, considering how green they are, other than clean up?
Yeah, that's a big part of it, and that's something that often goes overlooked in terms of when people analyze, okay, there were this many sacks or this many incompletions, it automatically goes on the quarterback and the offensive line. But the urgency of the route running, the cuts, the timing, the depth are huge in a game like this. They do a great job. Again, there's no tells in terms of how their pressure looks are coming by design. That's part of their deal. They just don't get in different looks. And that's again where both the quarterback's awareness, the O-line's initial recognition, and then getting the ball out on time are paramount.
And how do you feel about your core being ready to do that?
So far they've been good. But that's against a scout team. But just as far as the things I'm talking about, the depth, the timing, the anticipation of what could happen, it's huge. And again, can't really be overstated in terms of I know you're saying of just the we haven't got a ton of reps with those guys, but the importance of that is huge.
Mike?
Coach, do you like these kinds of marquee games where all the attention is on these teams?
I love these kind of games. Love them. If you can't get excited to prepare to play against these guys, you're in the wrong sport. These guys. I love this. I love Michigan State. I won't like them on Saturday at all, but I love everything about them, and it's a huge, huge challenge for our program. And putting our guys in the best possible position is something that's a huge challenge and a lot of fun simultaneously.
Questions here. Anna, we're going back to the phones then. But remember, if you have a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad.
We have no further questions. Excuse me, we do have a question from the line of Joe Rexroth from Detroit Free Press.
Hey, Mark. I was talking to Mike Bellotti yesterday, kind of going through the history of this offense. And I was just wondering, when you got there in 2009, did you change anything? Is it exactly the same, or is it markedly different now from what you inherited? And when you look at the history, talking to Mike, it sounds like for the most part that the offense is the same since 2005. But what have you changed, if anything?
Well, I think we've gotten quite a bit faster in terms of how we run plays and the administration of that, or I should say, at least we have the ability to go fast. And faster. We tweaked some of the terminology. We've changed the signals again this year because we're getting too many outsiders with knowledge of what we've done, and too many guys playing in the NFL that have a lot of that information. But yeah, it's been kind of a meshing of several systems for a long time, and we're always trying to tweak it to get just a little bit better, a little bit more efficient, or taking advantage of our personnel in that given year.
Our next question comes from the line of Jake Faber from .com.
Hey, Mark, how important is getting out to a fast start for your offense against Michigan State?
If we get out to a fast start, it's very important. If we don't get out to a fast start, we have to overcome it. So we'll wait and see. But ideally, yeah, we'd love to get off to a great start and maybe make them a little bit more one-dimensional, which they're probably not going to do unless it's out of hand. But we'd love to get off to a great start.
We have a question from the line of Dennis Stott from CBSSports.com.
Mark, I apologize. The phone went out a little bit on that last question I asked about sharing time. You mentioned something about negative recruiting. What form did that take?
Well, just of kind of what you were alluding to of not enough balls to go around, kind of talk. And we want guys that absolutely want to score a lot of touchdowns and love having the ball in their hands. But we love the guys that are just as excited for setting somebody else. Or you look at Keenan Lowe last week; he was about 70 yards away from the back corner of the end zone, sprinted faster than anybody on the field to celebrate somebody else's touchdown. And those are the kind of guys that we love in our program. And, a few other teams have used that against us of you're not going to be the focal point, the man, the guy, and that's probably not necessarily a great fit for us.
Our next question comes from a line of Chris Solari from the Lansing State Journal.
Mark, kind of two quick questions personnel-wise. One, for you guys, what makes Ifo such a good cornerback for you in your system and going up against top receivers? And two, on Michigan State side, how much different are they without Max Bulla in the middle on defense?
The first part of that, Ifo, I think the two biggest qualities that Ifo has going for him, aside from his natural ability, is he's really smart and he's really tough. He loves to practice. He loves to train. He's a great leader. He's a guy that covers kicks, and he's jacked to cover kicks and return punts, just like he is of going up against a premier wideout. And so those kind of things make him, in that elite special and elite special type of class. And then the last part of it, and I mean no disrespect at all to Bullock, but their linebackers are outstanding, and I don't have a stopwatch on Taiwan Jones, but he runs great, if not, maybe even a little bit better. The combination of those two guys, 43 and 34, Davis, right? Is it Davis and Jones? Those guys run really well. They played, a little bit of inside and outside last year, and I haven't seen much drop off, unfortunately, if any.
Excuse me, we have no further questions.
Thanks, Anna. Aaron, did you have a question, or never mind?
I was going to make a joke that he should make whoever that is run stairs later today, make all that noise up there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You had a comment.
We'll end it right there.
Any other questions?